Tonight's class is about Negropeans and the Negro Bedwench. And I wanted to go into this subject specifically because of a lot of people who are claiming to also be conscious, and also the people that you're starting to see pop up with a lot of slave mindsets and slave actions. Because both of them, the Negropean and the Negro Bedwench, actually started in slavery first. The Negropean, that's the Uncle Tom. Usually Uncle Tom is usually, that was created out of the one slave that was allowed to be in the house and work with the master, and also decided to, usually would start off with a woman first, and that woman ended up having a product of that slave master, and that slave child would end up being somewhat the Uncle Tom. And also, you also had situations where Uncle Tom may have been let into the house to work as well, like a butler or something like that. So it was two instances. And also, with those Uncle Toms, the first part I want to deal with, the Negropeans, they were the ones that usually would foil a lot of the slave rebellions. And when you dealt with the Negro Bedwench was also created also due in part because of the slave woman was let into the house. She ended up becoming what we know as a bedwench. She ended up sleeping with master. At first it was rapings going on. Then she began to get into the groove of the situation. And so also from being into the groove, Stockholm Syndrome began to become developed in her mind. So she got used to it. So she grew an affinity towards her captive or that master. And she also foiled different slave revolts. These are demon seeds during the time of the African in bondage. And so you still have, to this day, fast forwarding all the way to now, you have, Negropeans, males that find ways to assimilate themselves in the European structure by marrying amongst the Europeans, getting jobs and saying words like, I was the first at my job to do such and such. So mentally you want to rub up against master any way you possibly can as a man. And then you also at your job, whenever there's a man that may not be as agreeable as you, as a Negropean, you try your best to get him in trouble. And you still have men that, African males that want to, of course, find ways not just by job description or by entertainment industry. You just want to marry amongst white women in hopes that at the end of the day you can erase your African heritage and your African gene and African culture when you're sadly mistaken. And then we're going into the bedwench of today, where a lot of the bedwench of today is usually black feminists, that they beat down the black man for some political reason, for no apparent reason, or because most of the time when you listen to black feminists speak, most of the information that they're coming from is from white supremacist websites such as Niggermania and On the Stormfront or On the Front. And they quote these sites. So for them to say that they're against patriarchy, but yet you quote where patriarchy started, which is the European man or the caveman. So both of these instances, as well as with the Negro Bedwench, she does her best to sleep with master still to this day in the hopes that she could be into white citadels in the white European structure as well, and you find your best to destroy the mindset and the image of the African male in the society. And usually the Negro Bedwench is the one that is at the second part of that totem pole. The European male is at the top, and that Negro Bedwench is a close second. So these two, go ahead, sister.
I was going to say, is that what we're seeing today with the scandal and the and different programs like that? I read, and I think it was a Jet magazine. I'm not quite sure. I can't recall exactly which year it was, but it was Regina King expressing that one of the reasons why black women don't find love is because they won't date outside their race, and she was like promoting it, and I kind of didn't finish reading the article and threw it down because it kind of disturbed me. But
right.
So it's, this Bedouin mentality I'm seeing is being promoted to us.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, because they believe the hype. Most of them in their mind just want to be with a white man, so they find a million excuses to just go get one. And that's the reason. That's the reality. You know, they want to create these shows and participate in these shows by asking the question, why are so many black women married, and create all these reasons for why, and usually they just point back to the black man being nothing. So yeah, you're right. The Scandal Show is a perfect example of the Negro Bedwench. And then you have the Uncle Tom sensations, such as going into slavery with Django, where Sam Jackson played the Uncle Tom in Django.
Hold that thought for 1 second. Did you notice that the same woman that played Scandal is the same woman that played Django's wife?
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of thought that was, I didn't know if there's any significance to that or not, but it kind of.
I'm not sure of the significance, but yeah, you're right. She did, Kerry Washington played both roles, of course.
Yeah, and I'm like, where's her mentality at? in
real life, she's married to a black man. She's married to a black man, but the fact that you're playing the role of a Negro bedwench in the show Scandal shows a lot about your mindset because you chose the role.
Exactly, that's what I was getting to. Yep. Like, when do you say no? I'm not going to do
that. Yeah, because you made the choice to get on and say, this is the image I want to portray, because realize this is a show that's being pumped with a lot of money. So the fact of that being done shows the fact that this is something that they want to push to the world. Anything, big budget shows, big budget films, there's a reason why they're being put at the top, and they're going to get a certain amount of money because it's meant to invoke a certain amount of emotion inside the person that's watching it. It's a subconscious thing. You might not automatically get up one day and say, I'm going to go get a white man, but subconsciously you're looking at this, and so at a certain point, whether you see it or not, it's going to affect the way you see yourself and the way you see black males.
I agree. Like they say, if you stay in the barbershop long enough, you'll get a haircut.
Yeah, exactly. If I'm sitting there long enough, eventually I'm going to be like, man, I need to, I don't really need it, I might as well get one.
Yep.
Yeah. And you take it on the male side, most of them, we could take the Negropeans to the sporting world. Most of them, they have no problem being a slave to these to these white owners, to these coaches, because these owners, they sitting up top and they're watching from a distance like overseers, and while these black Negropean because most of them are Uncle Tom by mindset, because at the end of the day, all of them have made a certain amount of money where they don't have to be performing for the slave master anymore, but they choose to do this to this day. So they don't have to do this, but all these, I can name them: LeBron James, the Dwayne Wades, the Kevin Garnetts, all the ones, the Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson tried to work with Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan rejected him because he'd rather work with whites.
I think the last time I seen him, he was with a white woman now. And
Michael Jordan, he was a white woman, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wow,
right.
White.
Right. That was a conscious decision. So you already know where he stands. So he would be under that same level of Negropean because he completely wants to. First of all, he completely rejected Magic Johnson in terms of coming together and forming a conglomerate to buy out, if they really wanted to, buy out certain leagues or create their own league, because he still wants to be a slave. And that's a mindset. You decided to do that. Most of those athletes fall under that same category of Negropean because they want to seriously be in the house so bad they want to keep performing for them. It's a performance. It's a slave mindset. And you do anything you can to foil anyone else trying to be rebellious to that system. That's why you have, to this day, they try to make Jim Brown to be the villain. He's a crazy old black man and this and that and this and that, but he tells the truth anytime he gets the mic in his hand.
Right.
You got the Jay-Z's. He's a perfect example of a Negropean because he wants to be so bad. He wants to be connected so bad to the blue blood society, even though he can't get in that. He wants to belong to it so bad.
It's like reaching for something he'll never get it. Like putting the carrot in front of the horse, and the horse ain't never gonna reach it.
Exactly. And the thing is, when you take it down to our level, most of the people that we deal with, most of the blacks that we deal with, don't want African consciousness, so they want to appease the European. They want to be next to the European as close as possible because they don't want anything to do with Africa. They want anything to do with being African or call themselves African or having an African language. All these things mean rebellion, and they signify rebellion against the European structure. So they don't want to be connected to this. So they do anything they can to try so bad to be in their system because they want to go right back to the way it was. That's why most of them want slavery. Once you had a point in time when there were rebellions, they didn't want to leave. They felt because they were in the house, it was all right to be where they were. Even though most slaves were trying to get out of there, they would we got it good, so why would I want to leave, and why should we leave? So when the rest of the slaves were trying to leave, they were the ones that were like, okay, look, these are going to be the slaves, are going to leave, we're going to have to, That's why most slave revolts were folded, because of someone decided to snitch, and that was usually the Negro bedwench or the Negropean, which is the house nigga, or the Uncle Tom. And to this day, anything that's being said, of course, can be applied today, and that's the main reason why I said this, because there's so many one of us. This is not even taking it to the deep level of black devil. This is just in the sense of those that choose to be on a large scale. They don't mind themselves being sucked dry of their energy, and that's why Sunday in the lecture I did, it was based upon the succubus principle, where someone, mainly a sixth ether force or a European, is sucking the life and progressive energy dry of the non-ether being is the African. And so that's why you see in a lot of black men that were white women, they begin to take on their mannerisms. Now, there's nothing wrong with a black man speaking with good diction and because that's a good, you have good vocabulary, which means you read. But the mannerisms that you exude, that means you're trying to be European. You want to be white. Same thing with the sisters, these Negro bedwenches. Eventually, when they're around white men that have sex with white men, those white men have extracted their African energy from them, and then you see nothing left but a dead walking corpse that is just like the European.
Energy vampires. Energy vampires.
Say it one more time, because I couldn't tell what you said.
Oh, I said the European energy vampires.
Yeah, exactly. The bloodsuckers.
Bloodsuckers.
They're about as close as you can get to a vampire to this day is the European. They want so bad, aside from the subject, to be like us that they do. That's why they do whatever they can to infuse with our melanin and our sun heat genes, and that's why we have to do whatever we can to reject it.
Let me tell you, and I won't go too deep into this. This is another subject. You have just confirmed what I've been feeling just with a coworker of mine. It's like when I'm around her, it's like I'm exhausted. And then I ran into the vampirism and energy. So that'll be another subject. But just to say that, you just confirmed what I was feeling, what I started looking into. And that's not even somebody that it's just another female woman, but just they want to be up under you all the time. And all of a sudden you just drained. It's like,
right. Exactly. It's you have to know when it's time to back away from them, because they have a good habit, a bad habit at that, to get real close. When they want to talk to you, they get in your face, and you can smell their dead corpse, their dead carcass. When they're around you long enough, you can smell them. This is reality. You know, you can see them. You know, you can see them and you can smell them. And so what they do, they want to touch you, anything, any way they possibly can, because they want to get as close to God as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have, back to the subject, you have the Negro bedwench as well as the Negropeans who want to be as close as they possibly can to them. You know, another Negropean and house nigga show, you know, like the Jeffersons, you got the Bensons, you got the shows like the Different Strokes and the Websters where these are pet niggas, and all of them is all about, you know, trying to connect themselves with Europeans. That's why they were pushed so much. That's why, because shows like Different Strokes, there was a lot of money being pushed into Different Strokes, if you notice, and that show was very popular amongst black people. And amongst all people in reality, you know. So all of these shows, look at when you're looking at different types of shows, look at the symbolism in them. It's not all for entertainment. There's a reason why they put out certain shows, because they want most of us to start go right back to seeing themselves as God, because they realize the sun heat gene is starting to ignite inside of us as the African.
Yep. So
they need to do whatever they can to unlike that, to douse that out, to douse out the flame within the solar plex, because their lunar plex needs us.
Yep.
You know, that's the problem.
It's like they know, and even if they don't know, they know that in order for them to survive, they need that, because without it, they're dying off and they know it. Even if they don't consciously know it, innately it's in them. They know. Right.
Exactly. You know, there's a reason why, as we always said, in order for them to prolong their life, they had to breed us out, and they had to breed a whole new race of people that consisted of at least 4 or 5 different races. And that showed that, you know, they've already shown that maybe in the next 15 to 20 years, the majority of the people will be, as we know, neutrinoid. You know, and that's a problem, because the African gene, dark-skinned, woolly-haired gene, is beginning to be bred out very soon. You're going to see a lot less of it. I'm not saying it's a big dramatic situation, but it's going to be, you know, a process of elimination. You're going to see a lot less of it, because my father, Dr. York, has already said that we are at the last point of our genes, the 4th generation, so we have been bred out. So we have to be smarter in who we choose to deal with on a mate level, who we choose to populate with, because then it's time for us to refill again, because you're seeing a lot of us, you know, start to dwindle out. This is something that we have to, this is serious, because we have to start paying attention to where we are in terms of population growth, because we're starting to go into a minus birth rate, and we have to pay attention to this. You know, because when Europeans, the Tamahu, the Caucasian, is born, he's born at a minus birth rate. Most of them are born with a low sperm count anyway. And so they have to connect themselves to us in order to continue to be where they are.
But if we don't,
they have
if we continue on this way in the next 100 years, like we'll be.
Right. Yeah, they'll be gone. But, well, the thing is, they'll die off. It's like, example, they can die off, but their genetics will still exist somewhere along, because you'll see recessivity in the neutrinoid.
Okay.
Yeah. So somewhere in there you see them. You know, and they have to be amongst us in order to survive. But one of the biggest problems, you may not even be around Negropeans a lot, but you see examples of them, you know, as well as Negro bedwenches. But you have to, you know, a lot of us have to identify them when we see them, because we have no idea what we see when we see it, because we think everything is normal. And that's not an abnormality. That's not a normality. That's an abnormality to have an African that wants to tell on everybody else and destroy and kill us off when we're trying to rebel against the oppressor.
Right.
That's a serious situation. That's not being in an oppressed situation is not normal. That's a war situation. That's like being a casualty of war. You know, we're really refugees of war after being let go from kidnapping. That's reality.
And that, the Stockholm syndrome, that makes things that's starting to make a lot more sense. Why I see, or being more aware, I should say, of the mindset of our people.
Yeah. Because it's like a dog. You know, a dog gets into the groove of being with its master after a certain amount of time. Eventually, you know, he begins to love the master, begins to love, you know, the person who owns it. Same thing, and you know, it's a psychological process. At first, you hated it, but you got used to it, and now it's normal to you. But it's crazy how it's like watching 12 Years as a Slave. The black woman in the movie was getting raped, getting beaten, but she didn't find a means to ask the brother who was leaving, can I go with you, or can y'all buy my freedom or something? She got pretty much into the groove of what was going on. You know, and so watching that, as a woman, to see something like that, you might not take heed to it then, but it's in your mind. All that is unnecessary. All that is done on purpose.
Yeah.
You got to identify it.
That's deep.
You know, and she was a form of a bedwench. He took it whenever he wanted it. You know, she can complain all she wanted to, but when it came time to wanting to leave, she didn't leave. You know, she didn't take that much of a rebellion. She didn't kill him in his sleep. She didn't do any of those things. She got into the groove of the situation. You know, and the fact that they made that movie and put that element in that movie, because there's no, according to reading that book, you know, I'm sure there were situations that he saw situations like that, but it's funny how they have to interject Stockholm Syndrome when it consists of a white man and a black woman on purpose in that movie.
Right.
You know, that's subconscious. It's subliminal subduction.
And it's bad.
Very necessary.
It's very bad because I'm telling you, it's bad.
Yeah,
it's bad. I'm seeing. I have a sister, a friend of mine. I mean, she locks and off. I can't find a man doing this, and all she wanted is white men. So the other night we were at work, and I'm not making a long story short. She's telling me about this. I haven't had a boyfriend. I said, what's your problem? I said, why you keep looking at this white man? You know what you want? Why you keep doing this? You know,
right.
I'm just not figuring it out because I said, when she don't wear blonde hair, no weave, or none of that. I mean, so. She's like, she's pursuing these white men. Like, her mentality is, I want a white man. And, I mean, that's what she goes for. And I've just never seen nothing so in my face like that. So just,
right.
And it's that bedwench syndrome from genetics being passed down from one to the other.
That's true. A lot of things that we're starting to do now is becoming in our DNA. You know, it's like if you do, it's like any type of DNA. If you catch a disease based upon, let's say, diabetic. Let's say you became diabetic based upon not doing the right diet. That gets passed on to your daughter or your son, you know, or somewhere in genetics, it gets passed on. Same thing with this situation. A lot of things that we're doing now, especially this situation that we're going on right now with the Uncle Tom and Negro Bedwench, a lot of these things are becoming genetic actions. You know, you don't have to even put it on TV anymore. It's like you have to literally teach our own what it is that they are doing or avoid these people at all costs because they'll turn you in. You know, these be the ones that will turn you into the feds.
Yes. They be the ones that go behind your back to the boss and try to steal your job. And, they're the ones. They're the ones that throw you under the bus and they'll play your friend.
Exactly.
And, another thing I noticed about those that are like that, the Bedwench and Uncle Tom type people, when they know that you're coming into your own, you're coming into your awakening, and they start to see that, they become very negative towards you. The energy is very negative.
Right.
And it's like they set out, it's like they don't, it's like a person don't like you and you don't know why, you ain't do nothing to them. they treating you funny, they act weird, it's like they know. Like I'm like you're a constant reminder that, you know, you're messing up my groove here. You know, I want to be with like these white people, but you're a constant reminder to me that I'm black.
Yeah, because the thing is that what you're doing eventually is going to make it harder on them. We know that. If you're displaying a certain amount of African pride, even at your job, because they don't have the right to take that away from you. But if the Negropean or the Bedouin decides to see you do something, so the first thing they'll do is tell you, like, why do you have to do that? Why do you have to wear all that stuff? Why do you have to wear your hair like that, your clothes like that, this and that? Why do you realize you're messing up for me? You know, I'm trying to get in the house, and you're making it hard on me to be able to get into that situation because you're trying to show off your Africanness. This is why they separate themselves from us, because they want to be so much into that paradigm. It's very necessary to know who you're dealing with. You know, again, these people that we call, you know, black people, you know, at the end of the day, they'll call themselves African American because, first of all, number one, that's not even a nationality or even a color of a person. That's something that was given by a Negropean, Jesse Jackson, and back in 1984. So at the end of the day, it's not a race or a nationality. It's a title. It's something that was given, like you give something to a dog, it was fetched.
Right, and it means nothing.
That's all that means.
It comes to standing on your own as a nation.
Mm-hmm. They don't want. Thing is, they want to be so far away from Africa as possible. That's why, you know, we have the joke back in the day. You know, that you have the Negropean who marries white, gets a teeth white, get a white house, get a white car, might get a white suit. Anything that he can to get disconnected from anything of blackness or darkness or sun heat gene, because they realize that a lot of us are starting to, you know, be unsleep and to be awoken. You know, they realize the spell is broken, so they have to find any means that they possibly can to, you know, distance themselves or eliminate those that are of some form of consciousness.
Right.
So all that is necessary. These Negropeans in the Christian church, the Muslim mosque, we're going to take it deep. The Muslims that, it's funny, you have Negro Muslims in America who won't connect themselves. They didn't want to connect themselves when we were Muslim in Brooklyn as Ansar Allah, because we were black Muslims to a high degree. They want to connect themselves to parallel mosques, you know, on the other side of town where they can go in there and make salat next to a white man, where the imam is a Middle Eastern, because at the end of the day, subconsciously, they see him as God.
Right.
The same thing, of course, in the Christian church. These Negropeans do all they can, these Uncle Toms do all they can, these black Christians do all they can to be connected with the slave master, and it's a subconscious white daddy, because Jesus represents six ether force, but he also represents white daddy, because at the end of the day, you become dependent upon Jesus for your salvation. Something you cannot prove to exist, but it's easy to lean on it because it's of the white race. So therefore, you have your Stockholm Syndrome, because Jesus also represents slavery and oppression, and you also have the Negropean, because at the end of the day, this is your connection to your white master or your white daddy.
Now, have you ever seen the movie Sankofa? Sankofa?
I've never seen it. My mother's seen it. I need to see it.
Yeah, I have it. I have a copy of it, and there's a young brother in there who his mother, coming on the slave ship, was raped, and her name was Nuno, and she was the one that was always connected to. She was awesome. She was still connected to her own, you know, her land, and they would go in the hills and they would sneak off and do their thing. But he was in a terrible conflict because he wanted to be with the black woman, but then he kept. It's like that Stockholm Syndrome. But his father was a slave master, and he taught him what to teach and what to preach. And you got to see it, because it's kind of hard to explain. But it definitely goes into that mindset. And in the end, he killed his own mother.
Yeah,
what I also noticed too is it seems like the ones that have these mentalities are the darkest ones. It's like the darker they are, the worse the mentality. And I'm looking at Michael Jordan like, really?
Yeah.
Dark as you are?
Yeah, you're right. And you know, it was funny that in slavery you had two types. You had two types of bedwenches. You had ones that were the most desirable, so they ended up becoming the bedwench, usually the light-skinned ones, those already miscegenated. And you had the one that were the darkest one that wasn't as desired by the slave master, but she desired to be the bedwench above everybody else. So also, it's degrees of this. It's not just one form of the bed. We have two types. You know,
right.
That dark-skinned one wanted to be in it so bad that she also foiled slave revolts before they even started, before they even had a chance to even talk about it. Mm-hmm. You know, the dark-skinned one began to hate herself. She's one of the first ones to love to perm her hair because she wanted to be so much like white woman, and to also, you know, of course, have the flank straight dead hair. This is eat the hair, to do anything she can to be dark-skinned, to be the African melanated being for her white master, but have the white woman's hair. So she was in total limbo of confusion.
Right.
So a lot of, again, when you look at, and I'm touching the Django again for a second, because if you're looking at a lot of that movie, you have the movie, you have the part where Don Johnson, he plays his Big Daddy, and then within the whole slave house, these are black women. If you look at them, black women lusting over one white man.
Right.
You know, because remember, historically speaking, this was after the transatlantic slave trade. This after the slave trade was being abolished. So this is the time of the domestic slave trade. You remember, most of the domestic slave trade involved the woman. So you had brothels going on in slavery. It wasn't just picking cotton and picking wheat and tobacco. There's a lot of these brothels going on. A lot of these slave masters, these Europeans, having whatever they could of black African women. So all this was going on, and they began to as well. You know, this is a whole group looking at that movie, and Big Daddy's a whole group of them containing Stockholm syndrome. You know, loving a white man.
Right.
You know, it's these movies are very, you know, we can look at the movie and be entertained by it, but just look at the subconscious seduction of what was going on in these movies. You know, in that movie, you know, if you go back to certain movies like Drama Mandingo, a lot of that was going on as well. They kept pushing the Stockholm mindset on black women in these movies, so they had to keep pushing, you know, within it. The bedwench began to be rebirthed, not just in slavery in the 60s and the 70s, but going on to now. Most of these sisters now, when you meet them, and I'm just speaking from a black man's perspective, they are the Negro bedwench, because what they'll do is they'll beat down the black man and overtly, blatantly say, I don't mind dating outside my race, which really what you're saying is, I want a white man.
Right.
That's the bottom line. Let's just keep it real. Let's keep it 110. You want a white man, and you do anything you can. Good.
Well, I mean, what other race is there? There isn't. You know, it's either white or black.
Yeah, it's either white or black. Because you don't want nothing else. You don't want us anymore because you believe the hype. You accept what the media portrays as being an African male. So you want a white man. You want a European. Go get one then. We don't need you. The reality is these Negro bedwenches have become devil seeds in our race of people because they create dissension. Right. And they push that mindset upon other black women that the black man ain't ish, or whatever word you want to use, that we're less than that, we're animals. And again, a lot of the things that they quote from, and it's either knowingly or unknowingly, a lot of the statistics of black males in prison from a lot of the white supremacist websites, and I'll quote again Niggermania and On the Stormfront, because if you look at those sites, they very much disrespect black people as a whole. I went there and looked at them and trolled, and I saw exactly the way they look at our people, and it's ridiculous that a lot of these so-called black feminists, they quote this verbatim when they want to go against or when they want to make excuses for why the black man ain't shit to them. So all of this is necessary, and it needs to be pointed out. This isn't an unnecessary statement. This is reality. Right. You know, what they'll do also is they'll quote, and it's also black conscious sisters, too, that's in these. It's because it's a mind state. You don't have to have a white man, but it's a mind state. Because what you'll do is, if I point out Europeans that may have opened up black schools, black colleges, created Planned Parenthood like the Margaret Sangers or the Laura Spelman Rockefellers, they get mad. They'll get mad at you. They'll say things like, "What does it got to do with what we're doing?" They'll create reasons for why what you're doing is wrong. When you point out the honest truth of what's being done to our people over a 100-year span since the end of slavery, especially with eugenics, and you quoting and you're pointing out the facts of what these women were doing, these white women were doing, these bedwenches have a problem with that. Because subconsciously they're a Negro bedwench. Negro bedwenches also go away from the points. Instead of going straight for the jugular, they like to go all over the place. They don't want to go to the point and say, look, this is the problem right here. They want to find some other reason why this is going on, and most of the time they point back at the black man. No, that's the bottom line. And again, these Negropeans, again, I'm talking about the men, a lot of them have a problem with, again, black progression because, again, they feel like the best way up top is to rub up against that white man. That's the best way that they can get there. And they have to, again, distance themselves from anything conscious, distance themselves from, of course, black leaders, the Elijah Muhammad's, the Dr. Yorks, the Malcolm X's, the Marcus Garveys. When you mention these names to them, it makes them cringe. It's like, what are you bringing this up to me for? Are you serious? What does this have to do with making money? That's what they'll tell you. That's the bottom line.
I work with a sister who's, she told me she'll be 56 or something like that, and she didn't know who Marcus Garvey was. And I just looked at her, and like, you don't know, because I was mentioning Pan-Africanism and, speaking on that level. And she's like, well, who's Marcus Garvey? And I was like, what? What? I didn't know what, I said, you don't know who Marcus Garvey is? She didn't know who Marcus Garvey was. And I said, go look it up, because I can't even explain that to you. And I'm
don't be surprised.
Like, wow, you are really too old not to know who Marcus Garvey is. At least have heard his name.
Don't be surprised. I've met sisters that never heard of him.
Made her look it up.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters. I said, look it up and call me back.
Right.
Right.
I mean, I want to go back in the scandal. I realized sisters had a real affinity. We use the word affinity a lot tonight, but affinity for a scandal. Just think about it. This show is about a black woman being a white man's whore, and you like that. But again, if that show was about a black president being in love with a white woman and had a black mistress, had a black wife, had a white mistress, these same sisters will be ready to boycott that show. Right. See, and that shows the mindset of a lot of sisters that I've had this competition with. A lot of sisters that call themselves an African consciousness. And this is a subconscious thing. It's not something that you can't get rid of, but you have to want to distance yourself from these type of shows. It's not only entertainment. Anything that's on that television, of course, is promoting the European mindset. It's about giving you a dose of their mentality and taking away from who you're supposed to be. So to say is only entertainment is a form of ignorance. Right. Because, again, why would you, as a black woman, as an African woman, like to see yourself as a whore on TV?
Right.
Bottom line.
Don't have a problem seeing themselves being thrown out there with their booties out and videos being treated like, dogs, and Snoop Dogg putting collars around their neck. So that doesn't surprise me that wouldn't bother them.
Especially the fact that most of these music videos, most of those music videos are shot by black women. When you take the Love and Hip Hops, the Love and Basketball, all of those, Love and Hip Hop specifically, the director and the producer of that show is a black woman. So they're being whored out by the same person that they're supposed to be, supposed to be their sister. They're being whored out by black women. Black men ain't doing that to them. They're doing that to themselves. And I'm not saying it's an embedded mindset. This is what they are, but who do you start from? Where's the source? Because up top, the elites, the Hasidic Jews own these shows, but they're using the Negro Bedwenches to promote what they see an African woman as a whore. In the Love and Hip Hop, the music videos, and so this has been going on for years. Most of those music videos that portray black women as whores and this and that were actually put together by black women, not black men. Wow. So it goes deeper than the shows and the movies. Take it down to the domestic situations of the music videos that we saw a lot back when I was younger. So, wow. Does anyone have any questions?
No, but now it makes sense. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, the degrees are different because I'm seeing that the Bedwench went from what my understanding is, the Bedwench went from the little bed to the mentality of the Bedwench. So now she's whoring herself out in different ways.
Exactly.
Like you said, through the entertainment and through the feminist movement and those kind of ways, and promotion of integration, that type of thing. Exactly.
Because the thing is, most of them love to be and have to. Most of them love to have the mindset of being integrated when we're not really integrated at all. Because if we were integrated, we would be living in the white neighborhood. It wouldn't be such a thing as a white neighborhood in a ghetto.
Right.
It would be because come on now, white flight came. When white flight hit in the mid to late 60s after the civil rights, bill was passed, because you got to realize white people were just as poor as black people for a long time in this country. But once they got those FHA loans and white flight began to happen, they began to leave. Like this good example of here in Houston, you had in the part of Fourth Ward and what's known as River Oaks now, all that area. That was Freemanstown. That was consisted of black people, Jews, Italians, and Irish. Mm. And they all lived in the same area. But once white flight happened, the only people who didn't leave were the blacks. And that area was being funded by the government for years when the whites was over in that area. Once the whites left and white flight kicked in, that area began to become a ghetto. Fourth Ward community. That happened. It didn't happen here in Houston. It happened all over the world. I mean, not all over the world, all over the country.
Yep.
White flight, and you got to realize there were two forms of white flight. This is separate from the subject, but this is still pertinent. You had the one that dealt with Levittown after World War II ended, and then, of course, in the 60s, where whites got certain loans that blacks couldn't get, because they were setting something up where they're creating a status imbalancement where the whites was having more money than the blacks, and the blacks, it began to develop a situation of a ghetto in the United States.
Right.
So, and so, go ahead.
And then by us not having any type of knowledge on how to obtain these things, and to not only obtain them and maintain them, we just crush.
Yeah, we lose because it's a game of chess that we're losing because we're always 10 steps behind, because we keep having this mindset that at some point we're going to get some type of a handout from them, and we never got that at all. We should never expect it, but just take into consideration they never gave you anything. So what makes you think they're going to get something now? What makes you think that the person who raped you in slavery, basically hung you during the point in time of Reconstruction, sick the Klan on you, sick dogs on your mother, your father, and your family? At what point do you think they're going to give you something to uplift your situation.
Right.
And this is not just to you. This is to the Negropeans and the Negro Bendwenches out there. You can do whatever you can to be a part of their situation, but just remember that at the end of the day, they're here for your destruction as well. So they'll, you know, that's like being the slave trader, putting them on the boat, and then the white man says, "Okay, now you gonna get on there your damn self too, nigga." That's exactly what's going on, and it's gonna happen anyway. So you have to be able to deal with those on a certain mindset. The Negropeans, the Uncle Toms, and the Negro Bendwenches are gonna be what they're gonna be. It is what it is. It just have to be. That has to be accepted. They just have to be pointed out.
Right. You got to definitely recognize them when you fall into the trap.
Exactly. Because you feel you have to love everybody.
I was just going to say that, especially when we are those that are Pan-African issue. You want to love your own and love. So you think, okay, just because this is a black woman, I have to love her. That's my sister, whatever. But I'm finding that ain't. You can't love everybody. And I'll tell them your God didn't love everybody. Okay.
No, so. Yeah, that's common sense, because that type of it's nothing wrong with loving, African people, of course. You want to love yourself, but at the same time, just be aware of the people who usually foil up black organizations are the ones that look like you.
Right. Not that you don't love them in a brotherly sense, but you can't expect them to be the same, and you can't. How am I trying to word this? I gotta love you from a distance type.
You can't trust everybody. You just can't trust everybody. That's all it is. Bottom line, that's it. You just have to know who you're dealing with.
But there's are some trying to wake up, because I have to say at one point, maybe not as deep as some others, but I was in a state of confusion at some point. I used to straighten my hair and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, everybody did.
I always had that innate fire in me anyway. So now through right knowledge, I'm in science of Wu-Nuwaupu, it's coming out. So I'm breaking those chains, and I'm coming free of all that. So I do see that there's some that are still kind of in that teeter-totter, and those, I guess, the ones you got to try to reach. So like you said, it's going to be what it's going to be. It is what it's going to be what it's going to be. You're not going to be able to change the mindset of some of these Bendwenches and some of these Uncle Toms.
Mm-hmm.
What kills me are the ones that actually know. That you can sit and have a straight conversation and know that this brother knows. And then his white girlfriend come up on the floor, and I just look like, wow. But what can you say? I mean, what can you say?
Nothing. They want what they want. It's the same thing. Again, it's the same thing in slavery. It's a mindset. It's not about attraction. You feel that as a Negropean, as Uncle Tom, that if you get that white woman, that's your ticket to leaving our community and getting into theirs.
Right.
That's the mindset.